Yeah. When the announcements were made on the radios, there was some description of what color was, what the warning level was, but they don't actually tell you what the colors mean and how to protect yourself. Like, are you actually supposed to wear a mask? If so, what kind of mask? Does a regular dust mask work? Do you need an N95? Do you need an actual respirator? And if there is those kind of warnings being implemented, how long? What about the people that are working outside for numbers of hours? How do they protect themselves? Well, a couple nights ago, when we walked outside, it was thick. You could smell campfire smoke. That's what it smelled like. But then 3 nights ago, it smelled like burning plastic. So what changed that made those, like, what is actually catching fire now? Is there more than just the forest on fire? What is actually happening?
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
I don't think I've ever seen you without glasses, right? I want you to speak to first who you are and what your role has been.
Okay, so my name is Mark Bost. I'm a just recently retired district forester with the North Carolina Forest Service. I had a full 30-year career working with the North Carolina Forest Service. I started out as a service forester working in the southeastern part of North Carolina, moved through quite a few different jobs throughout the rest of the state, doing a lot of different duties on a daily basis. But throughout my career, I had a continual involvement in anything related to fire control in North Carolina. And through training and experience that we gained working on wildfires in North Carolina, I also had the opportunity to work on out of state. Got to travel across a lot of the United States of America doing different jobs, either as an employee of the North Carolina Forest Service, or what a lot of us do is go out as in the summertime when they're having big fires out in the western part of the United States of America. We get to do what is called a casual hire employee for the United States Forest Service, for the U.S. Forest Service. I started out with duties that mainly involved fire control on the fire lines, such as engine operator or a heavy equipment boss, working with dozers and tractor plows or engines, wildland firefighting engines. Once you do that for a few years, you usually get an opportunity, and I did, to do other things. I did different duties and prepared worked in the planning section to help plan and predict what the next day's activities were going to be. Moved kind of up through the process and got more involved in leadership roles. Became a planning section chief on fire, which is basically most important duty is development of the daily incident action plan that firefighters will use when they are working on the fire line and stuff like that.
So what are we smelling from a wildfire, and how do the wildfires, how are they different? Like, some people think these are just people like that are camping and the campfires get out of control. But we're smelling forests that are on fire, that are in Canada, that are nowhere near campsites, correct?
Right. When you smell the smoke from a wildfire, you're smelling burning organic material, right? So leaves, the litter layer underneath the forest, which is basically pine needles or deciduous tree leaves, hardwood tree leaves that are burning, small twigs. Depending on the intensity of the fire and the location and the fuels, you could, sometimes wildfires, when they really get out of control, can consume the complete tree, and but you're still smelling the smoke from organic debris. I'm not a chemist. I don't understand a lot of chemistry and a lot of stuff like that, but I do understand the difference in organic smoke from an organic source and smoke from a non-organic source. And of course, a wildfire can impact both, right? Because if you have a wildfire that's burning out of control and it's running through a forest, it will eventually impact residential areas, and you can eventually incorporate smoke, a component into that smoke that is not organic material. When houses burn up, there's all kinds of hazardous materials that become consumed in the fire and can be emitted into the smoke plume and into the air, which I would say for sure is a whole lot worse. Now, I'm not going to say that burning organic materials healthy to breathe. It's not. It makes me have sinus issues. I cough. I have allergies. I'm allergic to any kind of smoke like that, and I know a lot of people are. But I would say the hazard level when you're talking about a wildfire versus an impact to other things is a lot different. So you're burning organic material. It's not good. There's no way you can say it's good. Of material that can be put into the air from a really bad wildfire in terms of particulate matter, in terms of concentration of particulate matter, can be extreme compared to other sources. So
on their site, it says, if you must spend time outdoors, a well-fitted respirator type mask such as N95
yep.
equivalent respirator that does not allow air to pass through small openings.
Yep, and I've got one of those right here, and I have wore something like that on a prescribed burn or something if I was watching the downwind side of a fire line and I knew I was going to be standing in really heavy smoke.
We're speaking about the frequency and tying in climate.
Yeah, and I'm not a climatologist. I'm an observationalist. I observe what I see, and
Right.
of course, I read and study scientific literature and research papers that are done at universities and stuff like that. And I can definitely visually see that climate change is real. Of course, you can see everybody can follow the scientific data. And I was watching the news this morning on last Monday and Tuesday were two of the hottest days ever recorded in the United States of America on an average across, since records were kept. You can understand what kind of impact that has to fuels when you have consistently hotter and drier weather than you've had before. So you're going to have wildfires that burn hotter. You're going to have more impact to the forests. The forests change. You can visually see things like that just from studying forest types and tree species and where they were and where they are now.
We know that the climate is getting hotter, and can you speak to the CO2 emissions being part of that?
The first job I had was working with the U.S. Forest Service at a research station in Scotland County, North Carolina. And they had doing a study on carbon dioxide impacts to forests, because nobody would debate or disagree that carbon dioxide levels were rising in the atmosphere. And so the U.S. Forest Service wanted to say, well, what kind of impact will increasing carbon dioxide levels have on our forests? The U.S. Forest Service scientists were wanting to know, okay, what's going to happen to these trees as our carbon dioxide levels rise? And of course, trees like carbon dioxide, and they'll store carbon dioxide in the form of carbon in the tree. And so trees grow faster and put more carbon, sequester more carbon. And when they do that, that obviously translates to more, as trees grow, they naturally produce pine needles or foliage that successes in the fall, falls to the forest floor, accumulates on the forest floor, in the form of biomass or fuel if you're talking about a wildfire, right? And so there is more fuel loading as carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere. And if you want to say that translates to more intense wildfires, that's an obvious conclusion to draw, right?
Yeah, it's an
Higher levels of carbon translate to more carbon sequestration by trees and other vegetation, which eventually accumulates more fuel. So that's a direct linear relationship that you can point to.
So I always want to end with hope and what people can do that's going to create hope. And you've worked with me on my documentary on how we can make a change for climate change. And I always circle back to trees.
But I like how you always do try to end your whatever you're working on with a message of hope. And the message of hope for me, Diane, has been people like you that bring awareness to stuff like this and make sure that we understand, impacts and the good and the bad, and you get the message and the truth out there. The message of hope is always in the truth, and the truth will set you free. And the truth is that if we as people do a better job of understanding things like this, that things can get better.
Community with the urban forest is going to be the healthier community, correct?
Right, you're going to have shade, you're going to have lower temperatures in that area, a lot more oxygen production, a lot healthier, cleaner air.
Yeah, but speaking to the hope component, if we in our towns and cities can tree line that street that on that 90-degree day is about 120, right? That street's going to be
absolutely.
That cement's about and if we're going to look at impacts, if we can bring in tree-lined streets and trees in all parking lots, because that cement is also contributing to this heat component. We're not going to see forest fires necessarily in our cities, but we are going to see the kind of heat that is not healthy. And as a forester, you know how trees work. The more tree planting, the cooler the city, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if we are going to talk about the environmental health and the health of our families, we know that we're bringing in there's a lot of smoke coming in from Canada, and there is only one thing that I personally think that we can do where we have some control is to take our towns and our cities, and if we continue to green them up and to bring down that temperature level of 120, because under the tree we know it's 70, correct?
Absolutely. But you got the right gist of it. Shade makes a whole lot of difference, when you're talking about an urban forest canopy versus not having one. And you're absolutely right. That is a good message of hope, is that we can encourage people to understand the importance of trees and having trees around us, and for all of the benefits that they provide, not just the shade and not just the production of oxygen and cleaning carbon dioxide out of our air, and you're talking about wildfire smoke from Canada. If you had a city that, didn't have trees in it, there would definitely be more of an impact from stuff like that than there would be a tree that had a healthy urban forest canopy. So,
because that tree is going to take in toxins, correct?
Well, it will sequester carbon dioxide for sure. They will scrub some of the carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere out. There's still going to be particulate matter in the air, and trees don't really use that, but they definitely help break it up, and filter it. And as the air passes through a forest canopy, it breaks up particulate matter in the air a whole lot more than a place that doesn't have that. So that's an accurate statement.
I know that you're now still working for the U.S. Foresters, correct?
I'm a casual hire, as on an as needed basis, pickup firefighter for the U.S. Forest Service, and I hope to continue to do that as long as I can.
Well, as you know, I thank you so much for taking the time, especially the what people are smelling.
I would say there's probably more hazardous material when one house burns up on a 100,000 acre wildfire than the other, 99,999 acres of woody debris that burned up underneath that. There's chemicals and all, you know, when a house is built, all the plastic that's in the plumbing and the plastic that's in the electrical wiring and chemicals that are in everything that's in that house that was burned and consumed up being emitted into the air, that's toxic. You know, when we see, you know, when I worked for the Forest Service, a lot of times we would get calls for illegal burning, and there'd be somebody out in a rural area that had a metal can with their garbage burning in it, and you can just smell all the chemicals and that burnt plastic smell in the air, and see little kids running around in the neighborhood and know they're running around and they're playing, breathing in that smoke. And the EPA will tell you that's a lot more detrimental to public health, you know, that kind of smoke than smoke from forest fire. Not that, and I will caveat that and say, don't think that breathing in smoke from a forest fire is a good thing. It's not a good thing. You don't want burning particulate matter in your lungs or in your respiratory system under any circumstance. But
I want you to stay healthy for a very long time. Enjoy your retirement.
and when you mentioned the comment about me, I just want to thank you for all you do. You do such a wonderful job of reaching out and doing stuff like this and educating people and promoting, you know, the importance of trees in an urban setting or you know, protecting water quality. I just really appreciate you and everything you do.
Well, it's been a
You're a
great
great activist.
working with you. It's been a great 15 years. I've learned most everything that I about forests in the first watershed dialogue I think I ever had was with you and a conference about 15 years ago. There was a conference, and I didn't know much at all, if anything, about watershed. Now the Flora Rose, the outdoor wetland and experience that is all about learning about watershed and wetlands and protecting our water. So you'll have to get to Pennsylvania sometime and see it.
I hope I do, and I hope if you get back to North Carolina, I get to see you.
Oh, I'll be there.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. I'm gonna jump off, and
So good to talk to you.
so good to talk to you. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
For weeks, hundreds of wildfires have burned across Canada, scorching nearly 28 million acres and pushing smoke pollution into the U.S., including right here in Erie.
This is beyond the part of looking or feeling silly wearing a mask. This is for your personal health.
Urban forester Scott Scholander recommends wearing an N95 mask outdoors.
This is one of the most effective face protections that a person can use for particulate matter, particularly the larger particulates.
But for those working directly near fire and smoke, Scholander recommends wearing a 3M Cool Flow respirator.
You know that it's working when you don't breathe, air does not get out through any parts of this mask other than the filters.
As the fires continue, Erie News Now meteorologist AJ Mastrangelo will monitor the air quality conditions.
We've certainly seen our fair share of air quality issues here over these past several weeks, and it's really just been kind of the wind aligning. You got to think about it like lake effect snow. If the wind's the right direction, we get hit with the smoke, we get hit with the snow. Same kind of thing here with those wildfires.
As for a potential end in sight,
What a lot of the Canadian Fire Service is saying right now is whenever that winter snow comes, because you need something on the ground. The rain's good, but the rain will evaporate. It'll go seep into the ground. Once you get the snow, that's something constant on the ground. So once that's there, it means no fire can really be continuing on.
Jamison Hicksonbaugh, Erie News Now.